Hello, and welcome to Metaphysical Millennial. I'm Jenna Rae, your host and spiritual big sister. This podcast is a cozy corner of the cosmos for the weird, wise, and wonderful, where we explore all things magical, mystical, and metaphysical, with soulful curiosity, glittery wonder, and an open heart. My mission is to hold space for your spiritual journey and guide you back to your truth, to help you feel seen, supported, and connected as you reclaim your power and remember who you really are. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let the magic find you. Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Metaphysical Millennial. I think it's only right that this first episode consists of me sharing personal stories with you and connecting and letting you know a little bit more about myself. Spoiler alert, I grew up as kind of an awkward kid. I didn't have a whole lot of friends. I was the only kid that lived in the cul-de-sac that I grew up in and would visit my stepbrother and stepsister every other weekend. And until my little brother was born, kind of learned how to play independently and keep myself busy. I loved being outside. I would ride my bike around that cul-de-sac from sunup to sundown. I remember getting a Skip It for Christmas one year, and I swear by the end of the day, there was a circle burned around that cul-de-sac from me going around and around. Sometimes the neighbors' grandkids would come over and I would get to play with them. We'd play Power Rangers and climb trees and anything to keep our imagination going. There was a little patch of woods next to the house, and I would pretend like I was Pocahontas and pick berries and make jelly out of them. And honestly, I loved being outside. I loved being connected with nature and being under the sun and touching grass. I did have one very best friend growing up in elementary, and we would have play dates a lot. I would go over to her house and we'd play Spyro and make potions out of all the different drinks in her fridge, collect Beanie Babies and those little gold Pokemon cards that you could get at Burger King. And we had a lot of fun together. I have a lot of really fond memories with her. But other than her, I really wasn't cool by any means. I really didn't have a whole lot of community in elementary school. My crush never liked me. I remember writing about it in my little Barbie diary and always being so heartbroken, listening to Backstreet Boys and just, being super emotional. And honestly, from a very young age, I was in tune with my emotions and could always kind of gauge the emotion in the room. Now I know that's being an empath, but at the time I didn't. So growing up and trying to navigate being an empath was a bit challenging. I always wanted everyone to be happy around me. I always wanted people to have emotional stability around me, and quite honestly, prioritize that over my own emotional stability. I did experience a lot of adversity growing up, whether that be financial, emotional, or physical. I remember in first grade, there was writing in black crayon on the back of the bathroom stall door. And after the teachers trying to figure out what was going on and it being this big ruckus, I remember breaking a piece of my little black crayon off and going and saying, "Look, I found it. I found it." And the purpose of that was because I wanted us to just get back to school and get back to the lesson and fix the problem. I always had to be the fixer. Later on, I remember one of the teachers telling me, "Now, Jenna, we got fingerprints from that crayon and your fingerprints were all over it," and tried to blame me. I wasn't going to fess up to breaking my own crayon and pretending like I found it. But I did not write on the back of that bathroom stall. I will tell you that. But really, I just always had the need to care for and stabilize others' emotions and make sure that everything around me was calm and peaceful. At the end of elementary school, my mom left the relationship that she was in and moved back to the Midwest, where she's originally from. We were living on the Gulf Coast at the time. And for a year, I moved in to my dad's house, where I started school there. It was the beginning of sixth grade. I went to half of sixth grade there. And although I had my stepbrother and my stepsister in that same school, I was still, again, the awkward kid, really didn't have a lot of friends, really didn't know anybody, and didn't quite know how to connect with others at that time. After about half of the school year was over, I ended up moving to the Midwest where my mom was living. And when I moved to the Midwest and started school, I quickly became kind of cool, and it was neat. People were excited to meet me, and they thought my accent was cool. Some of the boys that I had crushes on had crushes on me too, and it felt really nice to feel seen and wanted, and like I had a community around me. At that point, I was just so excited to have community around me that I wasn't really thinking about the long term. I was just excited to have friends. And some of my friends were kind of troublemakers. I remember one of my teachers telling me, and this is in 6th grade, Jenna, you need to be careful about who you surround yourself with, because the friends that you choose now are going to be the friends that you have later on in life, and you need to choose wisely. And I mean, she wasn't wrong, but at that time I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. What do you know? Like, these people are amazing. Like, what? But realistically, I was kind of attracting the wrong people into my life. I wanted community, I wanted connection, and it just felt nice to have that. I didn't really think about the grander scheme of things of what these people were into, what I really wanted to do. We didn't have a whole lot of money growing up, so sports were kind of out of the option, because in my mind, they were way too expensive for me to get into, because there was always a fee to be able to play. So I just kind of disconnected from that and never really tried to pursue sports or a club or anything like that may cause a financial burden for my family. During this time, the internet really started to get crazy. People started to have cell phones. There was one kid in my friend group that had a cell phone, and otherwise we would all ride bikes or walk to each other's homes and then walk around town. You could always tell where everyone was at because all the bicycles on the front lawn. MySpace started to be a thing, and you had your top 8, and you could customize and take really cool photos and connect with more people that way. And I always thought that was super cool. We would spend hours and hours making our pages as cool as possible and exclusive as possible. That was how you really knew it wasn't just a basic template, But yeah, so the group of friends that I ended up getting involved with in middle school, I still hold a lot of them very near and dear to my heart. But yeah, we were kind of bad kids. We didn't have the best influences in our lives, and we got into some trouble. We would go down to the park and play hacky sack, and I remember buying our first bottle of booze off of a friend's older sister's friend, and it just typical teenage trouble. That did end up kind of transpiring into more and more as the years went on. Once I got to high school, I experienced my first heartbreak. It was absolutely terrible, but we went down different paths, and the boy that I was so in love with ended up getting deeper into kind of toxic situations and prioritized that, and it was just the end of us, and it broke my heart. It really did. And I started leaning into friends that also had emotional issues. Being an empath and trying to navigate the world around me, I was always so focused on creating stability for everyone else that I didn't prioritize my own stability or emotional wellness. My emotional wellness was determined on those around me. So I very quickly learned how to stabilize their emotions in any situation, whether that be family member, relationship, a friendship, or even a love relationship. Because I was so focused on everyone else's happiness, I never really allowed myself to live into my full authenticity or honestly live up to my own potential. I searched for community in all the wrong places. I trusted so freely and gave everyone the benefit of the doubt, even if they proved to me that they didn't deserve that. I still gave them a chance. Unfortunately, that led me to having a lot of unhealthy relationships and attracting a certain type of person into my life. I was able to stabilize others' emotions, and people started to feed on that, like almost like real life vampires. You hear about energy vampires, and that's the type of person that I was attracting. I dated multiple people that ended up having drug issues. I had a lot of friends that had emotional issues, and being the fixer and the emotionally intelligent, responsible one, I always felt an obligation to help them along the way or provide them with what they needed to be okay, and always make sure their days were going well. And honestly, those were very one-way street type of relationships where at the end of the day, that was never reciprocated. And it took me learning that lesson the hard way many, many times to start to do things differently in my own life. I believe I was around 14 when I had a friend move in with me. She was having issues at home. She was living with her grandparents. It wasn't comfortable there. And I felt it necessary to ask my mom if she could stay with us and really take her under my wing. I had just started my second job. My first job was a little Chinese restaurant because I got a trespassing ticket and had to pay the ticket. But that's besides the story. More about shenanigans later. My second job was at McDonald's, and I got that job, and for whatever reason, I felt the need to provide for this friend that had moved in with us. Granted, I'm 14. I'm just learning how to provide for myself. I'm just starting to make money. That's really not a whole lot of money. Minimum wage was like $5 at that time, $5.25 or something. And I mean, what was I doing? I was 14, but I was so compelled to care for her and make sure that she was okay that, again, I set my feelings aside. I set my own priorities and my own life aside because it was fulfilling for me to know that I was making an impact in someone else's life. I think part of growing up, I was taught that that's what you do. You help your friends, you help people in need, you are there for your neighbors and those around you, and that's the right thing to do. What I didn't realize until later on in life, because I was naive, is that will not always be reciprocated. And you need to be wise with where you spend your time and your energy, because those are two resources that you cannot get back. So it did not end at 14. It did not end at 16. It did not end at 18. Most of the relationships that I had thereafter, that first really big heartbreak, ended similar to that relationship. I dated multiple people that unfortunately the relationships ended because they had a drinking problem, or, one of my more serious, longer relationships, he ended up going to jail and had a pretty serious drug addiction that he hid very well. And I felt stupid, honestly. I felt really dumb that I was allowing these people chances and opportunities to continue to hurt me or make a negative impact in my life. When I was about 18 or so, Mom moved back down to the Gulf Coast to be closer to my little brother because he wasn't quite 18 yet. And she wanted to get some more time in with him before he was off to college and doing all the things. And I really leaned into my personal love relationship at the time. He had a lot going on in his life. He had a very challenging childhood and had recently connected with his family again, and his mother was very ill. So naturally, this was a very new relationship. I didn't want to leave him in that and leave him alone. And I was alone. I was in the Midwest. I didn't have any family. All I had were my friends, and that was the most important thing in my life. And I wanted to stay and be there for him and be there for his family while they were navigating this challenging time. Unintentionally, we project the things that we go through onto the people around us, and more often than not, the people that are closest to you are the people that you end up hurting. And that person had went through a lot in his life and wasn't really ever given the tools to know how to navigate the situations or properly deal with his emotions in those kind of situations, especially in a situation where you have a lot of grief. That led him to self-soothing and trying to figure out how to deal with loss. It was all in very unhealthy ways. After that relationship, I was like, I'm never dating anyone again. But lo and behold, I did end up in a relationship a couple months after that one had ended. And this relationship felt different. It felt stable. It felt secure. It felt really nice to have someone that I felt like had good intentions for me. It's like one day he came over and then he never left. But, after several years, we kind of started to drift apart. And honestly, in that relationship, there were some pretty major red flags that happened very quickly early on in the relationship, but it felt stable compared to what I had been going through. And I didn't want to risk my stability over one little tiny issue, even though it wasn't a little issue. It was a big issue. It was a major red flag, but I chose to look past it. And unfortunately, I shouldn't have. After 8 years of being with this person, I kind of looked at the relationship from a bird's eye view and realized that this wasn't the future that I had envisioned for myself. And I didn't feel as though I would be able to accomplish the things that I wanted to accomplish in my life, still being in this relationship and still being responsible for this person's emotions and well-being, and knowing that he needed to be able to find his own way to deal with his emotions and motivate himself. So I had to, for the first real time in my life, choose myself and leave that relationship. And that was honestly one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. I remember my mom coming over after the relationship had ended, and I was still staying at the home that we had purchased together, and I just collapsed in tears in her arms. And it was challenging. It was very challenging to leave the stability and the life that I created, that I had thought would be it, that everything that I had worked for over the last several years gone. And I think that's part of her healing journey, or spiritual path, or spiritual awakening that we don't talk about. Healing and growth comes with hardship, and that is a tough pill to swallow at times. Being in that relationship, I had already started to do things that I thought were to my benefit. I had changed my career so that I had more time at home with my family. I had really gotten in tune with my spirituality and the core of my being and my values and goals, and I felt as though I was really making progress in my personal life and becoming aligned with who I am and where I wanted to go and who I want to continue being. Once you start making decisions that align with your soul purpose and where you want to go in life, things just kind of magically start falling into place. And unfortunately, for some things to fall into place, other things need to completely implode. And that's what happened in my life at that time. I was leaving this relationship that I had been in for 8 years. I was leaving everything that I had built during that relationship and taking a leap of faith, but also just knowing that I had to. There was no other option except for choosing myself and making different decisions to better my life. I just had to surrender and go with the flow. Being a planner and wanting to have control over things and have stability because of the lack of stability throughout my life that I felt like I had. Ooh, that was very challenging. But they say that sometimes things have to fall apart for other things to come together. And that's exactly what that was. Part of any healing journey is hardship. And I don't think we discuss that enough. It's, people associate, oh, you're on your healing journey. It's all love and light and rainbows and sunshine. And it's really not. There's a lot of shadow work that goes into that. There's a lot of looking at your life and dissecting it and figuring out the changes that you have to make. And those changes are not always easy. More often than not, they are the most challenging things that you'll ever have to do in your life. Doing the shadow work, it's looking at your darkness and accepting it and knowing that you can make a change, and you're the only person that can get yourself out of the situations that you've put yourself in and make those changes. You're the only person that has control over your life. Being an empath and caring so much about the other people around me, it was so difficult to finally flip that script and choose myself and feel okay about that and feel okay being selfish. Taking care of yourself is not always selfish, because the more that you care for yourself and the more in alignment with yourself that you are, you can do more and pour more into those around you. Accepting that this had to be my selfish era was so challenging. And although I knew that in order to accomplish the things that I wanted to accomplish in life, I had to be selfish, it was still very uncomfortable. And I would find ways to prioritize others over myself. I'm breaking that now, slowly but surely. So after all of the self-realization and big life changes, I moved in with a friend for a year and set a goal to buy a home. I bought a home. I changed careers again. Started to cut people out of my life that weren't really resonating with me anymore. Something happened at the end of that last prior relationship that made me question a lot of the people that were in my life and what their agenda was for me and what their intentions were for me. I had a pretty big betrayal happen that, it really broke my heart and made me question most of the people in my life. And that was unfortunate, but if I don't care for myself, no one else will. If I accept less than, then I will receive less than. If I allow people to treat me a certain way, other people are going to think that that is okay and that's what I accept in my life. And I will not accept less than anymore. And that is part of this journey that, again, I don't think we talk about enough, that your healing journey and your spiritual awakening and all of that can be a very lonely place. It can be a very, very lonely place. And you don't need to be surrounded by tons of people, but you do need to have a couple of people that you can lean on and talk to and know have good intentions for you and that you can have community with. Community is so important, especially as we get older and grow up in life. They say that people live longer if they have that sense of community and connection. So yeah, I was making all these life changes and checking all the things off the boxes, got into a really healthy relationship with my love Hunter. And I'm doing all these things, all these great things. And then I had a friend that was having some big major things happen in her life. And she brought to my attention that she was going to a retreat. And I said, well, I want to go on a retreat. I've been doing all these things, healing my inner child and, choosing myself. I would love to have an opportunity to go on a retreat. And I knew that she really needed it in her life at that time. And I felt going on this retreat would be so supportive of her and her journey that I had to go. There was no reason not to. I had to go. Little did I know, I needed that retreat just as much, if not more, than she did. We went on this women's retreat. It's called the Healthy Emotional Regulation Retreat, led by Jenna Rae. You should go follow, do all the things. She is an amazing human being and Sherpa. She will guide you to some of the most inspiring ideas and some of the most inspiring goals that you could possibly set. I have a lot of gratitude for Jenna. Again, Jenna Rae, go follow, do all the things. Healthy emotional regulation. So we're on this retreat and I'm thinking man, I've been doing great. I've been crushing all my goals. What more do I need? And honestly, by day 2 of this retreat, I'm I know nothing. What am I doing? My life, what am I doing? And on that retreat, we did so many great exercises. I had so many great meditations. I was able to meet my inner child, embrace her and let her know that we're okay and that we have stability. Being that stable place that I needed for myself, being able to tell little Jenna that, hey, we're okay, and hold her and let her know that we are our own stability was so powerful. I hope that everyone can experience that at some point in their life, because that was one of the most pivotal moments of my life. On that retreat, another exercise that we did is we envisioned our future selves. Where are you going and what do you need to let go of to get there? In life, you really have to appreciate and value where you've been, simultaneously living in the present and appreciating where you are, but planning for the future. So, time is relative, but it's really important that we do slow down at times and enjoy the in-between. But yes, that retreat is essentially what gave me the inspiration to start this podcast. I was sitting on a bed with 2 of the other girls and we're kind of chit-chatting and talking about all of the different things that we were experiencing. And I looked over and I said, I think I'm going to start a podcast. I went to this retreat in February and it's June now. So here we are with our first official episode of Metaphysical Millennial. And I could not be more grateful to be able to share my story and to be able to tell other people's stories and to help guide you, or at least give you a safe place to understand that you're not alone and create community with you. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk, or thank you for coming to the first episode of Metaphysical Millennial. And I hope that we can continue on this journey together. Again, remember to follow, subscribe, all the things. All engagement helps. and I can't wait to talk to you in the next episode. That's a wrap on this episode of Metaphysical Millennial. Thank you so much for tuning in. If today's episode sparked something in your soul, leave a review and share it with a friend who's walking their own magical path. You can also come hang out with me on Instagram and Facebook, and remember, new episodes drop every other Wednesday. Follow and subscribe to stay connected. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and let your magic lead the way.